And do we have... Yes, we do appear to have sound. Okay.
Yeah, well, Steve, you push the buttons. Morning, everybody. How you doing, Sunshine?
I'm all right.
So, we want to talk a little bit about the debate that happened last night, and I have a confession. I missed it. And, so... JT, I'm amused by your comment. I'm going to have to ask you to stop there, or I'll have to swing the banhammer at you to make sure that we don't lose the show over such comments. And unfortunately, because of the nature of the debate last night, we're going to have to tiptoe around this and tread carefully a little bit. For example, I'll show you the headlines. Yahoo News: Georgia's Kemp and Perdue clash over amphibious priapisms. Fox 21 News: clash over elections in Georgia. Clash. That's all the headlines is they clashed. The AJC was a little bit more careful about it. Kemp Perdue clashed bitterly in first primary debate. So Y'all let me know if there's I don't hear anything. I saw one of the videos was still playing. Okay. There's nothing in the monitor, so we're not getting our audio hijacked. JT, I appreciate you you acknowledging that sentiment. You'll see the comment there by Steve Rodemeyer, and I would really love, JT, I would really love it if you would subscribe to the channel, and we have some, shall we say, brevity codes which we employ on this channel from time to time that you can learn through context as we move forward. But definitely appreciate you being here, and I don't disagree with you on any particular point thus far. Wink, wink. So, here's my first prediction. Here's my prediction generally on the elections. I don't know if we're going to end up with a Stacey Abrams as a governor. I would say that we are in severe danger of that. And that is largely because Kemp has done several things without even talking about the election stuff. Kemp has made some serious errors. Now, he's done some good stuff. Remember, Georgia opened up for anybody. Georgia got rid of mandates and got rid of lockdowns before anybody else. And the data following the end of the lockdowns in Georgia absolutely supported the original claim, the original assumption that the lockdowns were not only highly destructive to and detrimental of the ends of just economic prosperity in any given state, and that the lockdowns themselves were having severe negative consequences on people, such as increased suicide rates, increased self-medication, shall we say, increased substance abuse, increased all kinds of problems, domestic abuse, the problems resulting from people being stuck in their homes were alleviated rapidly once the lockdowns were removed. The mandates have been a huge problem, and Kemp did do right on that eventually, but eventually for Kemp came earlier than anybody else. Even the ascendant God Emperor DeSantis, who's really clawing for that throne. However, he made an absolute shit show out of the McMichael situation, where he should never have gotten involved. It was, he didn't have the authority to do what he did, and he did it anyway, and caused a huge problem for these three guys. And it is directly Governor Kemp's fault that the guy that held the video camera has been charged with the same crimes as the guys who were illegitimately charged with crime. When I say that, I say that advisedly. That McMichael's case, after Kemp got involved, told the GBI to go make an arrest despite the local police and prosecutors having already made their determinations based on the law. The McMichaels faced a trial where the defense put out a good, clean defense, made an excellent argument for the actions of the McMichaels, and then after having made the arguments and made the defense, even with the prosecutors stipulating to the claim that it was a case where Ahmaud Arbery had clearly not only been engaged in very suspicious activity, but had a criminal history of engaging in that suspicious activity. And when I say suspicious activity, had been convicted for the activity of which the suspicion arose, which is to say burglary conducted under the guise of masquerading as a jogger to cover his casing of properties and then illicitly entering and committing felony burglaries. Even after the prosecutor stipulated to that, the judge then instructed the jury essentially to disregard the law and the defense, and to make their judgment based on that. So Kemp has has not been great on everything. He has made some serious errors. As a result of those and some perceptions about the election, I'm not going to get into those. I'm not going to talk about that stuff on YouTube, but there are Georgia conservative voters who are going to look at what they think Kemp did or didn't do with regard to that and may not show up to vote generally. And that puts us in a precarious situation on the general between, I'm assuming, Kemp and Abrams. I suspect the way that we get there is this. we have five people running in the primary for the Georgia gubernatorial nomination. I suspect what's going to happen is the three nobodies. That's Candace Taylor is the most well-known of the three nobodies. And I'll talk about her just a little bit in just a second here. But I gotta scroll fast because there's a lot of crap in here that we don't want to talk about on the show. Okay, suffice it to say, if I don't remember the name of the other two candidates, it's because they functionally don't exist. They may be able to split the vote enough in the primary that the result will be, and I suspect this will be the case, the result is going to be that there will be a runoff between Kemp and Perdue in June, and Kemp wins that. The reason I suspect that's the case, with 5 candidates running, the requirement is that one of them wins 50%
plus one
in the primary. If nobody wins 50% plus 1, so if Kemp takes 49 and the other 51 is split up between the other 4, including Perdue, who will have the lion's share of that just on name recognition alone, then it goes to June, Perdue versus Kemp. At which point I think Kemp slays Perdue. Now, there are some, because of some of my aggravations with the job Kemp has done, I would like to see Perdue beat him, but I don't think Perdue can beat Abrams at this point. And the reason I say that is I've been to some of Perdue's events, I've been to some of Kemp's stuff, and Perdue just isn't showing up. And when I say he's not showing up, I mean, I've been to several Perdue events, and he can't get there on time. He's late by half an hour or more. And then he gets up there and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm busy, I've got a busy schedule and traffic is bad. We know, dude. We live here. And we plan for that shit. If you can't plan for that shit, how are you going to run a state? It also doesn't help him at all that the optics on Perdue right now are, hey, buddy, you just lost an election. You just lost an election to a bad Democrat. A bad Democrat with a lot of foreign interference. And remember, for anybody, see, we got JT and we got a few people that I don't necessarily recognize that popped up in the chat. If you haven't watched this show before, understand that when I say foreign interference, we're talking about a state election. I mean interference from other states in the United States. But the fact of the matter is, if you are in California or New York and you're spending money on an election in Georgia, what you are engaged in is no different than Saudi princes funding the Clintons for the national presidential elections. That is foreign interference. You do not have any business, California and New York, spending ad buy money or any other political support money on candidates outside your states. You should fucking stop it. Now, Alex says Jonathan Garcia is one of the other people that nobody knows about. He keeps messaging to try and get on my show. Hey, honestly, I'd bring him on this show and talk to him, but he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of. Honestly, I'd be surprised if he even shows up on the debate stage. Last night's debate, it was only Kemp and Perdue because the other 3 candidates have not managed to do well enough in the polls to qualify. So the debate was, it was, damn it, who held the debate last night? Anyway, the debate last night, there were qualifying requirements, and the other
Oh, this was the ABC, WSB,
Okay.
AJC. Like, this was the big North Metro Atlanta affiliate market hosted debate.
Right. And basically only Kemp and Perdue have gotten high enough in the polls to qualify. I've seen some reporting that says they're in a dead heat, and it attributes that to Trump's endorsement of Perdue. I don't see it. I don't buy it. Perdue entered the race late, and he shows up to his events late. He's... If I had one question that I could ask Perdue right now, it would be, so why don't you want to win? Because that's what I'm getting from him, is he's going through the motions and he doesn't want to win. He's not making an effort. So that's kind of where we are with this. So we're gonna have the primary, and that's gonna end in a runoff between Kemp and Perdue, which Kemp is gonna win. And then we just have to pray that Kemp can beat the Kool-Aid Man. And buddy, if Stacey shows up in a red dress, that will make my millennium. Please believe, if I can find a video of Stacey Abrams taking a single step forward in a red dress, I will make campaign ads for her as the Kool-Aid Man.
Right.
So.
I did actually listen to the debate.
Yeah, and I missed it because Cameron called me last night. It's not Cameron's fault, but Cameron called me yesterday to let me know the debate was going to happen. It wasn't even on my radar. I was like, okay, cool, no problem. I mean, I'm about to sit down and eat dinner with the wife and the kids. So here's what I'll do: when the kids go to bed, I'll pop downstairs and I'll just catch the replay. Nobody played it. Nobody's posted it. I can't find it anywhere. All I've been able to find are clips.
Well, first of all, the reason why it's not posted anywhere is out of the I actually listened to WSB's coverage of it afterwards, and they broke it down minute by minute, and they debated for a total of about 56 minutes over the hour. 23 of those minutes were about the 2020 elections. So the reason why nobody's...
So you can't post it anywhere. Yeah.
So the reason why nobody's posted it anywhere is like YouTube will take it down. And, okay. I don't think there's any other way to say it, but Kemp absolutely mopped the floor with Perdue. Toward the end of the debate, Perdue managed to get in a couple of shots, but it's sort of like, you know, when for the first 3 quarters of the football game, it's like, you know, 48-0, and then finally in like the 4th quarter, the team that is clearly going to lose finally scores a touchdown.
It's like that Super Bowl where I went to take a shit and then I came back, they were in overtime, and the Patriots just said...
No, this wasn't like that at all. It was never that close. It was never... Like, it really wasn't... There were, like I said, there were a couple of times where toward the end where Perdue scored some minor points against Kemp. But, I mean, for the most part, like... Okay, so spending all that time talking about...
That's for Steve.
Okay, anyhow. For the most part, like, and seriously, like, the first half of the debate was the 2020 election, and Kemp was able to swim through that pretty well, and part of what happened is Perdue didn't just give himself a black eye. Like, he gave everybody that would be suspicious of the 2020 elections a black eye, because it got to the point to where he kept going. He was essentially saying, nuh-uh, there was cheating. Right? And just couldn't back it up with anything. And at one point in time, Kemp even pointed out to him, said, hey, it was actually your responsibility to address these concerns while you were still a candidate on the ballot, and you waited until after the whole election cycle was done for you to raise any of these issues. You could have raised them before that point, and he didn't. I mean, it was a mess. It made him look unhinged. It made everybody that is suspicious of 2020, unhinged. Like this was a bad night for Perdue. And then he, in an effort to try and pin Kemp down on certain things, like he talked about immigration, said, well, what happened? Why'd you slow down immigration? And Kemp was like, well, there was this whole COVID thing, and I had a limited amount of state resources, so I quit addressing the immigration issue and started addressing like the COVID issue. And this somehow culminated in
Boston Strong.
That's a fantastic, boy, that almost did. And this somehow culminated into Perdue trying to make these points about how Brian Kemp is a weak leader because he's trying to say it's COVID's fault. When in all seriousness, I have a limited amount of manpower and there's a pandemic happening, so I'm throwing my manpower at the pandemic. It's actually a legitimate answer to that charge. But the worst, and I would not at all be surprised if Stacey Abrams takes this, cuts it out of context, and uses it in a campaign ad. Perdue's dumbass actually suggested at one point one way to deal with the increased crime in Atlanta would be to call in the National Guard. And it's just like, oh, you idiot. You idiot. Why would you do that? Well, you would do that. You know what became crystal clear to me listening to this last night? There's a reason why Perdue skipped the debate with John Ossoff.
Yeah, I'm getting that. Which is amazing because I've heard Ossoff speak. And
Ossoff speaks well, but he's an empty suit, you know? Like he's
right, he's an Obama clone.
He very much like the cadence and the style and everything. Like he should be beatable in a debate as long as you understand going in what you're going to be debating against. And seriously, and Brian Kemp is actually kind of funny. Like he was able to just do some of this stuff like off the cuff. Like Perdue thought he had this great line. You remember in the campaign, Brian Kemp had an ad where he was like, I'll use my own pickup truck to go round up illegals. And Perdue actually asked him, so what happened to your truck? It break down? And Kemp, like totally deadpan, was like, nah, it still runs. It's like, oh God, why would you do this? This is painful. This is utterly painful.
If you're talking about a professional political debate, brother, if you're going to bring jokes, they better be good. Trump was solid on that. Right?
Yes.
Trump was Hillary said something about if I was president or whatever, and Trump said, yeah, you'd be in jail. Just slipped it in there. Just zinger. And she had no retort. She had no reply, no comeback. But if you're going to crack jokes in a presidential debate, you had better be on your game.
Yeah, and Boston Strong says is making the point that is actually correct, that jobs lower crime. So yeah, when you impoverish people and lock them in their homes and give them no hope, there's a certain percentage of them that will turn to crime in order to make ends meet. And look, you starve enough people for a long enough period of time, there's a whole bunch of them that'll turn to crime to make ends meet, because being hungry is a real thing. So
yeah, make no mistake, my children will not be hungry. I don't care how many people have to die for that statement to remain true.
Yeah, so
I have a wife, 4 children, and a few people that I can stand to be around. Every other life is forfeit.
Yeah, so and as Perdue's bringing up the spike in crime and all of that in Atlanta, and even that, Kemp had a defense against, which is the fact that he was the first governor to reopen. It said, no, we can open up. And Perdue even said at one point, we have more illegals in the state of Georgia than the state of Arizona. And that was one of those things where, like, as soon as I heard him say it, I'm like, okay, I know that's true, because the way he hammered that point, he thought it was just some brilliant point to make. But the state of Georgia has more people than the state of Arizona, period. So the fact that there's more illegals here than the state of Arizona, as though somehow this is this big failing on Kemp's fault. Man, based on last night, there's supposed to be 3 debates total. And one of those debates has the opportunity for everybody that's on the ballot to be there, not just the ones that meet the thresholds that WSB imposed.
And I definitely want to watch that one just to hear what. Oh, that's going to be a shit show.
No, I don't think it'll. I don't know that it'll go that far. I don't know that Perdue. He might stay in it through the rest of these debates. Okay. But the whole thing about there being a runoff and all of that, no, man, it was, I wish you could have listened to it. It was painful. Like, Kemp just trounced, Perdue. The other thing that was talked about that kind of sounded like Perdue was scoring a point, but not really. Like, Buckhead wants to break off and be its own city.
Yes.
And that's something that Perdue brought up and tried to pin against Kemp. Said, Kemp, you won't take a position on this. And Kemp made the point, said, well, I'm kind of not supposed to take a position on this. There's this whole legislative process that's supposed to happen. And if you're an actual conservative, right, you don't want the governor of your state telling local municipalities what they are and are not allowed to do.
Right. Well, a party, the Georgia GOP, for example, will not endorse a given candidate. That's not their place. And so you'll see it if you go to political meetings, political rallies, where it's the party that's hosting the rally, right? You may hear some of the officers of the party say things that sound like they have a personal preference, but they're always very, very careful not to make a statement that can be misconstrued even as the party saying we prefer candidate X over candidate Y. It's very similar there. It's not where, very much like the Ahmaud Arbery case. Kemp doesn't have the authority to comment on that situation. Now, that hasn't stopped him in the past, but at least he's showing some professional restraint there. Now, the thing about Buckhead trying to secede from Atlanta, that's been going on for a while. I just pulled up some news because I hadn't intended to talk about it. I just tried to pull up some articles. Looks like they've been talking about it since back in 2007. And there's a couple of different issues going on there, not least of which is crime. And part of the concern is that while Buckhead is kind of like a borough, how New York City has the boroughs. We don't call them boroughs here in Georgia. It's just Buckhead. But it's part of the city of Atlanta. And there's a few communities that are like that they're not exactly boroughs, but they're not exactly not. And that's actually an important distinction because a borough is a more explicitly organized political and jurisdictional subdivision of its broader municipality, city, state, etc. And Buckhead, part of the problem in Buckhead, the Bucksit movement, is they have a high rate of crime, and a concern there is that that's a result of not just being in close proximity to the very high crime rate of Atlanta, Georgia, and Fulton County generally, but that the law enforcement is not distinct for Buckhead. And so one of the big issues there is they want to have a separate police department so that it is adequately staffed with people who are not the same Fulton Sheriff's Department and Atlanta PD, who are pretty clearly Democrat operators. Even with a conservative governor and being a more red than blue purple state, because let's face it, that's where we're headed right now. and it's not good. But law enforcement in this state has not been a strong suit when you're making an argument for our state capital. And that's one of the biggest complaints that Buckhead has in the fight to secede. So, and yes, Boston Strong, crooked law enforcement keeps crime high. That's a whole other topic. You're not wrong, but we are at the top of the hour, and I have to get moving. You have anything else to close on?
Steve points out that Perdue may show up for one more debate to try and save some face. And maybe not, but the whole thing about there being a runoff, like, I doubt it. Last night was Perdue's opportunity to...
Right.
And no, just absolutely not. Even touching on the lightning rod issue of the 2020 election, he handled it so poorly. Like, I am somebody that has specific thoughts about amphibious priapisms, right? And I still feel like Kemp just smashed Perdue. Like, it was embarrassing. So I'd run off. No, I think at this rate, Kemp wins it cleanly. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. He wins the primary cleanly. I'm still nervous about what happens when we get to the general with Stacey Abrams.
Well, let's keep talking shit about him.
Well, I mean, we have no good options.
No, we have options. You keep saying
I said no good options.
We have good options. We don't have great options, but we have good options.
So, anyway, I have to get going. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.